Okay, just switch it whenever. Okay, great. I'll probably stand here. My wife says the way to get me to shut up is to have my hands behind my back, and that way I'll never talk. 2:30, it's 10:30, 10:32. All right. Okay, good morning. 10:32. So I guess we ought to go ahead and get started. I've been presenting at Kisti since it was before Kisti. And I used to always joke that I never got to play the big room. I can't say that anymore. This is gigantic. Man, this is nice. My name is Keith Barnes. I am a digital learning coach for Bullitt County, but today I want to talk to you in my capacity as the STLP district coordinator for Bullitt County. And I want to kind of take you on a journey of how we went from 2 students going to STLP state district wide to 2 weeks from yesterday, we'll be taking over 205, something like that. So be prepared. That's what we're talking about today. So my first ever encounter with STLP was in this very building before it looked like this. And this is what it used to look like before they remodeled. And it was at the conference that predates this one that was either called Kentucky Teaching and Learning, Kentucky Technology Educator Conference. I don't remember. It had a couple of different names. And I was walking from the Calgary garage to here, which is where this would put me on the street, and lined up down the whole side were yellow school buses and kids carrying cardboard trifold things and walking, and teachers herding these people, and then kids carry rolling wagons like they just had a fire sale at a Best Buy. I mean, there were CRT monitors and computers and towers and stuff everywhere. And this was the first time, this conference had been going on for a while. This is the first time students were anywhere around it. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? Why are all these kids here? And so you went upstairs to the registration booth, and there's a table, and the kids were kind of bypassing the booth and going down there, and teachers are like herding people, come this way, no, don't go that way. And I asked the ladies register, and I said, what's going on? I said, oh, that's STLP. I'm like, still up. Well, okay, whatever. And I had no idea what it was, so I went on with my conference duties. And somewhere during the conference, somebody said, have you gone over and see what they're doing at STLP? I'm like, no, I don't even know what that is. You ought to go check that out. That's kind of cool. I'm like, oh, okay. So it was like towards the end of the last day, and the kids had already started moving stuff out. And so I was just kind of looking, and there were tables, and some of the trifold boards were there. And it was all technology stuff and talking about how to use email and how to do Word and this kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. But I really didn't think too much about it. So a couple of years later, I'm traveling south to seek fame and fortune. And I landed in Bullitt County, and 17 years later, I have found neither one of those. But I did find out that I was working as a technology integration specialist being paid for by a grant from the State Department of Education. And down deep in the language of that grant, under the duties of a technology integration specialist, was one sentence that said, will assist with STLP state championship as needed. That as needed clause gets you every time. I didn't think too much about that. It kind of went on with my life as a technology integration specialist until about, and this was when championships were still in May, towards the end of the school year. And I got an email from our CATS consultant that said, per the grant of technology integration specialist, you need to contact Elaine and volunteer for and see where she needs you, the Kentucky STLP championship. Oh, okay. So I did that, and not knowing too much about it, I put anywhere you need me. So where she needed me was web design. And it was either the first or second year that they had the championship in Rupp Arena. I'm not sure exactly. But we were across from the men's basketball locker room, which was forbidden territory. Nobody could go in there. But we were across the hall there in like a little classroom. And the guy that was in charge of web design had been doing it forever. So he said, just follow what I do. I'll show you what to do. Don't worry about it. And so we went and we had like 30 kids jammed in this classroom with all manner of different laptops, some which connected to tried to connect, and they had stuff and didn't have stuff. And they could make a website. We gave them a prompt about, it was that year, I believe it was for a pet store. They had to make a website for a pet store. And we had the elementary, middle, and high all in the same room. And it was the same prompt, it just, the rubric was different. And so we're in there and didn't have much to do. And they gave them, I think it's either 2 or 3 hours to make this website. And the high school kids weren't doing much of anything. Elementary kids were just like, they were just going nuts with it. They did all this free of activity and trying to get their pictures and all this stuff. And the high school kids were just basically kind of sitting there. And I'm like, I go to the guy that's running it, whose name escapes me at the moment. And I'm like, the high school kids aren't doing anything. What's it? He goes, they already did it. What? I said, well, we kind of gave them the basic idea of what they were supposed to do. So really all they have to do is find pictures of a pet shop and put pictures of dogs and cats and stuff and pop it in there, and they're ready and they'll be done. I'm like, okay. And sure enough, about 30 minutes before, you see this flurry of activity in the high school kids, and they had all these Adobe, I can't remember what the web design thing was, but they had all these fancy websites already put up. No, there's no way they did this in 3 hours. And so I took my clipboard and went around and checked off the rubric and handed my paper to him. He said, see you next year. And off we went. And still, I wasn't quite sure what this STLP thing was all about. So I did a little bit of digging. I found out some of the categories. And I really didn't think much about it. The next school year is I happened to be at one of the high schools in the library. And I was looking, there were some pictures, photographs around the library. And I knew that the librarian was a big photography bug, took a lot of travel photos and stuff. And I'm like, oh, did you take these pictures? He goes, no, that's my photography class. I got a photography club. They took those pictures. Oh, there's this thing. It's called STLP, and it has like a photo uh, competition in it, and you should get your kids to enter. He said, well, one of the kids won first place at the state fair. I'll see if they're interested. And that's about all I heard from him. And a month or so later, he's like, oh, yeah, we entered that STLP thing. Oh, okay, great. And then a couple weeks later, he's like, oh, yeah, they sent me, we didn't go, but they sent me an email. One of the kids won in the category they entered, which was undoctored photograph. And the other kid that entered the manipulated photograph, he came in second. Oh, awesome. Great. Maybe, yeah, maybe there's something to this SCLP thing. And so I kind of talked to a few people in my schools. At the time, I had some elementary, some middle, some high. And I kind of talked to them about it. And some of them were like, well, yeah, maybe. I had one lady that had transferred in from another district, and she said, yeah, I helped with that in my other district. I might try that. And so she got a group together, one of the elementaries. They're like, yeah, we might enter the projects thing. We got something we might do. And so there were little pockets, but nothing real organized. And then one day I'm sitting in my office. Well, actually, it's my table that's in the office. Well, it's not really a table. It was a piece of wood put between two filing cabinets, but that we digress. I'm sitting there working on something, and my boss at the time was notorious. Everybody had a phone, so he could like call you or intercom you through the phone. He was notorious for just yelling from his office. He kept the door open and would just yell at you. And all of a sudden, I'm working on some spreadsheet about something. All of a sudden, I hear this, Keith, is this TLP coach something we can pay people for? Why do you ask? He said, well, the superintendent is wanting to get some more money to teachers for doing things they're already doing. So, like chess club and archery and web design, the web master for the school. Each school had to have a web page. And this, and some of these other things, and a robotics coach. Remember that one. And I'm just wondering if STLP is something maybe we could get people to do and get paid for. Sure. Okay, I'll write it up. So he did. He wrote it up. I'm like, this is never going to pay. Lo and behold, STLP coach passes. $500 extra duty pay, which increases with every increase we get. So if the district gives a 1% increase, the $500 gets increased by 1%. But it's something, it's a recognition. Nobody does it for the money. It's just an appreciation kind of thing. So the thing about it, the way all that worked at the time was principals just appointed those people. They appointed a robotics coach, a chess. They'd ask somebody if they do it, and now it's a hiring process. You have to, but at the time they just appointed people. So most of the principals, and this didn't come out of school's budget. This was the district paid for these. So school's like, yeah, we'll get all these we want. And so the principals looked at STLP and went, well, it has students in it and it has technology. What do we have at our school that has students and technology? Broadcast, the morning broadcast. So if you did the morning broadcast, if you herded the students in front of the camera and turned it on, you got the STLP money. So at the time, it was mostly librarians. So up to this point, we had the two kids that had done the photographs, and we're paying. Now, to be honest with you, that stack right there is more money than you probably make in 2 years being the SCLP coordinator at one of our schools. But like, once again, it's not the money, it's the thought, it's the appreciation that the people, none of our coaches do this for the money. So now we had SCLP, but most of them would just do the morning broadcast. Some of them would say, well, yeah, there's some of that digital project stuff that we might do, or every now and again, one of them would do a project and would get through the regional, and they pay for the bus and basically use the $500 to pay for the bus to go to Lexington. Once again, not really too organized. We got a new HR person from out of the district, and I'm happily going about my technology integration specialist duties. I hadn't been a digital learning coach yet. I was still a technology integration specialist. And I'd kind of been switched out of where we were in the office in the techs, and now I was just kind of a nomad, itinerant technology integration specialist. So I got an email from the new HR person, and it said, the next time you're at central office, can you come and see me? And I'm like, this can't be good. Here's the new, I'm like, oh, how am I going to tell my wife I got fired? And I'm like, what did I do? What did I do? I'm sitting here thinking, what did I do? I can't really. And I'm like, oh, Lord, what's going to happen? So the next time I go and I'm like, hey, what's up? And she's like, what's this STLP thing? I'm like, oh, well, it's this technology leadership thing for students, and they have competitions that they have, and I kind of explained it to her, and she's like, oh, okay. I'm like, why are you asking me? She said, well, it was on the list of things we're paying people for, and I just wanted to know what it was. And I'm like, why did you email me? She's like, well, I asked your boss about it, and he said you were in charge of it. So, okay. That's the first I've heard of I'm in charge of SCLP. So now I've become either empowered or kind of on edge. I'm like, uh-oh, okay. Now SCLP is on the radar. The HR person sees that we're paying people and expects them to be doing stuff, and she assumes I'm in charge of it. Okay. So there's a quote I heard a long, long time ago when I was taking some class or something. And anyway, and it's always kind of stuck with me, is that the way to be a leader is to find a parade and get in front of it. Well, I was kind of pushed in front of the STLP parade. So I became the leader of STLP. So I'm like, okay, if I'm in charge of this. So the first thing I did was I went back to the HR lady. I said, what is on the job description of STLP? She's like, well, that's kind of the thing. There isn't. I'm like, oh, what do you want it to be? And she said, whatever you write up. Okay. So I went and I looked. I'm like, well, what kind of the thing I was thinking was, okay, we ask people for $500. We give people $500. what can we ask them to realistically ask them to do? So it came down to do at least one of the three things that STLP has. Either have students do a project, have students do um, digital projects, or go to the state championship and have them compete in challenges. One or more of those things is what it came down to. I had a couple of people that were just like, I do the broadcasting, that's all I can do because I teach and I can do it. That's all I can do. And I told that to the HR person, and she's like, how many years do these people have to retirement? And I said, probably 2 or 3. And she said, I'm new. I'm not going to cause waves. Let's just let that ride. But, and I'm like, well, okay, can I get that in writing just in case? And she's like, yeah. So we kind of let those people ride, and it got, the last one of them left about 2 years ago. So, but now I kind of want to go with what I do as a district STLP district technology coordinator. And what I do is I'm kind of like the field commander of a marching band. And field commanders is the new politically correct term for what used to be called drum majors. It's the kid on the far side with his back to you, who's out there waving his hands around. Really and truly, and I've been either a member of some kind of marching unit or instructing some kind of marching unit for the better part of 25 years. So I know a little bit about this. The drum major really has 2 basic functions. Get the band started together and make sure they stop together. All the hand waving in between is nice to have, but it's not really necessary. Oh, how do the kids keep time with the music? They move their feet and they listen to the bass drums. That's how they do it. And the kids, the performers, got way more stuff to worry about than looking at the person up there waving their hands. It's like, okay, how do I get to the next spot? What's the next piece of music? Hope I don't forget the music. Oh gosh, here comes Aaron. Don't hit me with the trombone slide. Ooh, okay. Now I got to throw this rifle and it's got to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Catch it. Okay, I caught it. Ooh, okay, now I got to get over here and oh, watch out for the flag. So, but every now and again, all that kind of gets overwhelming to them. And they're like, oh gosh, where are we? Whatever, what count are we on? And they look up and there's the drum major going away and they can get back on track. So he's there when they need him or her, but kind of stays out of the way otherwise. That's me. That's what I do. And I know this next part and I don't really care. Everybody in the stands that goes to a band show, except for, well, everybody there is there to watch the people on the field and the way they play and the way they make patterns and stuff. There's only about 4 people that are there to see the person waving in their hands. Their mom, their dad, their mima, and their papa. So these are the people that everybody comes to see. These are the people that get credit when the band wins, all that kind of stuff. And that's the way it should be. Going from 2 to 200 is about that much about what I did. It's mostly about what our coaches did, what our administrators did to to give kids the opportunities that STLP provides. So what do I do? And in a strange turn of events, being the STLP district person is part of my job, so I don't get the extra $500. But that's okay. So my the biggest thing I do probably that has the most impact is I recruit school coaches. Here lately, that's gotten to be more of the job because I have so much movement of teachers just within the district. I had like one that was a coach at one school, went to another school that had a really involved coach, and she's like, I can't be the coach there. I said, oh, let me show you how that works, and we'll get to that in just a second. And a lot of times I'll have, especially at the high schools, I'll have a good coach for 1 year, and then they'll get doing something else, coaching football, tennis, something else, and they go, I don't have time to do STLP. It happens to me all the time. So I've got all these coaches. So how do I recruit them? Well, one of the things that I do is we have 5 DLCs in our district. I'll rely on them to kind of feed me some names of people that would be helpful. The other thing I do every year when school starts, I take the list of last year's coaches and I put them into the email to see if their email has been disabled. If their email has been disabled, they don't work in our district anymore. So then I send a email to their principal. Your STLP coach position is vacant. Please choose, open up a new coach. These are the attributes of a coach. Doesn't really have anything to do with technology. It's people that can work well with kids, that are organized, that kind of thing. And I send that to the principals of the schools that need it. That's like within the first week of school. I give them 2 weeks, 3. If I don't hear back from them saying, Mrs. Johnson is our new STLP coach, they get another email. This one with the CC to their department lead. We have their director. We have secondary school director, elementary school director that's in charge of the principals. CC to their director. And you'll see why that's important in a second. And so it's kind of the same letter, little more strongly worded. Really need this. Projects are coming up pretty soon. Need to get a coach on board. This October meeting we have is usually the Monday after our fall break, which is usually the first week of October. So it's the second week of October. If I don't hear back from them by the third week of September, they get a more strongly worded letter about having an STLP coordinator. And it says, as I mentioned in my previous 2 emails, and it's CC'd to the assistant superintendent, who, when she was a teacher, was an STLP coordinator at her school, who is very, very supportive of STLP. I have a 4th letter in my back pocket that CCs to the superintendent. I have yet to have to send the 4th letter. By the third letter, I get somebody. So once I got all my new people, we have the October meeting. The October meeting is mostly for new coaches. If I have a lot of them, I do it in person. If I only have a couple, I videotape it and send it to them. I go through the stuff of STLP and how it works and all that kind of good stuff. And I have this in October to tell them you will not do a project your first year unless you have all fifth graders who have been in STLP at your school since third grade, which rarely happens. But what you will do, when it was in person, they had to go to the regional. And now they have to judge a regional to kind of see what the projects are like and that kind of stuff. Most of them can get something for the digital projects, and they'll all come to the state challenge. So I do that. The other thing I do is I find judges if they can't find them. They say, "Oh, we got to have a judge for this." I'll do that for you. I'll find them. I'll tell you who it is. Put them down. Mostly it's the DLCs. If it's not, if it's our instructional coaches, it's somebody. I will find a judge for somebody. I send emails with the deadline reminders. This is when it's due for, this is when you got to have registration for projects. This is when DCAs are due. This is when the state challenges are due. This is when, and about the only thing I ask from my coaches is to fill out a few forms. How many kids are going somewhere? Do you need judges? That kind of thing. Maybe 3 the whole year. Kind of the thing I think that the judges would say I do the most of is plan the trip to Lexington. We have a very cumbersome district field trip thing, and it's even worse when you have multiple schools going. Our administration pays for the buses for our kids to go. It doesn't cost our kids a dime to go to STLP. So I get the field trip permission forms. I get all the medical stuff together. When I say I really mean this lady named Kim, who's the administrative assistant to student learning. And my involvement is, Kim, STLP state finals is March 27th this year. Okay, thank you. And Kim, God bless her, does all the paperwork for me and everything. The only thing I got to do is get the bus list together and fill out some things about who has medical training and stuff like that. God bless Kim. She makes my life so much easier. And she just had an operation, got out of the hospital a couple of days ago. But anyway, so that's kind of what I do. My biggest thing is to get out of people's way, but take the stuff off of them. I don't give them anything to do. The only people I really ask them, like I said, fill out maybe 4 Google Forms a year, maybe. I ask principals to do a lot because it's like you got to get coaches. Oh, and by the way, they're going to be out of the building one day out of the year, and you can't say no, they can't go. One tried one time. I had the assistant superintendent tell him why that wasn't an option, and that's never happened again. So these 3 people right here, this is the people that make my job easy. This is the people that make, from those 2 camera kids to the over 200 kids that are going 2 weeks from yesterday, their support. Without their support, it wouldn't happen. That's where the money comes from. I don't have to beg. I don't have to ask. It's just, we're going, how many you taking this year? And I've never gotten, no, that's too many. So hats off to these people. Like I said, not me. I'm just up here waving my arms. Nobody's looking at me. Now, it is not all unicorns and rainbows. I have a really, really hard time keeping coaches, especially at the high school level. This year, we don't have any. Last year, I had one. I I don't know. I think we have a lot of turnover in the high school, more so than some of the others, than middle and elementary. I think principals are hesitant to ask people to do stuff, but the ones I get are really good, but they either go someplace else or something happens to them. I've hardly ever had a high school coach more than I think 2 years in a row. My two, well, I have two elementary schools that have over between them take like 40, 50 kids apiece to state finals to do stuff. One of those schools, the kids matriculate to a middle school that the principal refuses to do STLP. Just flat out will not do it. Doesn't want to bother her teachers with it. And I don't know. And that upsets me. It upsets the kids. It upsets the elementary coach. And my suggestion was that all the STLP kids' parents camp out in the principal's office till she decides that maybe STLP is a good thing. I don't know. It's odd that that's a thing that you're going to stand your ground on, something that really helps kids. And with this push on project-based learning, which is what STLP is, and profile of a graduate, and which is what STLP has, that this is what you stand on. And I don't know what the issue is there. But there's more good than bad. And I've been in Bullock County for 17 years. Next year is more than likely my last one. And STLP is the thing I'm most proud of. That's it. Oh, well. All right. How this story helps you. Not overly sure that it does. But first of all, get yourself a field conductor. Doesn't matter who it is, even if you only have one elementary, one middle, and one high, or one elementary and a combined middle and high. Get a field conductor. Get somebody to take all the planning, busy work stuff off of your coaches so they can coach kids and do teacher stuff. So get you a field commander. Show your appreciation to STLP coaches somehow. Your district might not be able to afford to pay them with a stipend. I get that. Some do, some don't. But there's got to be other ways you can show appreciation to STLP coaches and the good and the things they're doing for those kids. Actively recruit coaches. Keep kind of in your back pocket a list of, if this person leaves, this might be the next person I would ask to do this. And then try as hard as you can to get administrative support. If I didn't have the support of the superintendent, assistant superintendent, we would be nowhere near where we are. So think of us 2 weeks from yesterday as 203 of these wonderful young children traverse from Bullock County to Lexington. Some of them will win some things. Some will come in second. Some won't place. but they'll all have an experience that they'll remember for the rest of their lives. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Oh, well, a little early, but.